My appreciation to the organizing committee for the invitation to talk to you this afternoon about artificial intelligence. For full disclosure, I need to let you know that I'm going to present a number of examples of application and commercial products. I do not have any financial interest in these products, and I do not consult with these companies. The only consulting contract that I've had is with Huawei Technologies, the Chinese telecommunication giant, and I have not included any artificial intelligence application from Huawei. Second, full disclosure, my wife's family operate the largest egg farm in Canada, and I've been using some of the example of our family farm for my presentation. And finally, the last statement that I want to make is that I'm a veterinarian by training with a PhD in poultry science. I'm not a computer scientist, so my presentation is really going to focus on the practical aspect of artificial intelligence and not really how it works. So before starting talking fully about artificial intelligence, I would like to briefly go and give you some information about the global poultry sector and some of the challenges that we are facing. We'll then look at artificial intelligence and its application on farms, and you will see there's a number of applications already available. We also will look at artificial intelligence being used in the meat and egg processing business. And finally, the area where definitely artificial intelligence is already in use and is already used in our sector, it's all the areas about marketing and especially marketing for younger generation. So let's look at global production and some of the challenges that we are facing. As you can see on this slide, over the past 10 years, the chicken meat business grew by 41% and the egg business by 34.4%, ahead of any of the other livestock production. Overall, the meat sector, we added 32 million metric ton and 20.5 million metric ton of eggs. So we should congratulate ourselves for the contribution of the poultry sector, meat and egg, in terms of feeding the growing population, feeding the world, and especially in countries where there's still issues about malnutrition. And in terms of the production, really, Asia is where we see the most growth. As you can see, the egg production in Asia represents 62% of the global production, and for broilers, it's 34%. And as we would expect, and we've seen this morning already to mention, India is very well positioned. You see that India is ranked number 4 in terms of broiler production, right behind China, and in terms of eggs, India is number 3, and closing really probably within 2 or 3 years will overtake the US in terms of number 2 egg producing country. If you look at consumption, so on this slide, we have on the left the global average, in the center India, and on the right, the data for the highest consumption in a country in Asia. So we see for the eggs, the global average is 177, and in India, 76, so we have a deficit of 100 eggs that we should aspire really to compensate. And we can also only probably dream at this stage about reaching a level of consumption that we have in Japan with 333 eggs. And in terms of broiler consumption, again, the world average is at 14.4 kilos and 2.4 kilos in India. And again, let's dream of the consumption we have in Malaysia with 46.9 kilos. In terms of the global outlook for the poultry sector, excellent prediction done by the FAO and the OECD for the outlook of that 2018 and 2027 period. Population growth, plus 1%, and within that period, India is going to be the number 1 country in terms of population. GDP growth, 1.8% per annum, but countries like India and China will far outpace this level. Poultry production, again, we will add 20.9 million metric ton, and we see that Asia will represent 45% of the growth. And likewise, for consumption, 72% of the growth is going to be in this region. So excellent position. Drivers for food demand. 4 key drivers listed on this side. Population growth and income growth. And we saw in the previous slide that for India, those are excellent drivers, excellent parameters, which is great because as poultry producers, as food processors, there's very little we can do to impact on those 2 top drivers. But the next 2, the trend in dietary patterns, the consumer preferences, is where we can play a big role in terms of promotional information that we provide our consumers to convince them that poultry and eggs are the protein of choice that they should have in their diet. But we're also facing a number of challenges, and I have listed some of them on this slide. Certainly, we see more and more pressure in terms of cost by retailers where we need to produce more for less. We also see consumers, NGOs, government at times, challenging the sector in terms of its impact on the environment. And although the poultry sector has the lowest greenhouse gas emission total and per kilo of protein produced of all the livestock sector, we need to continue to reduce our CO2 emission. Animal welfare and well-being of our birds, we are being challenged tremendously by NGOs and other very vocal groups that often have very little understanding about poultry. Antibiotic-free production is now mandated by a number of consumers, and while the responsible use of antibiotics has always been a mandate of the sector, we are being challenged now, which can create some welfare issues when the birds are sick and we need to treat them. How can we resolve this problem? And finally, the last challenge we have is more and more that the consumers is very much remote from a farming community and do not understand really about poultry production. So the idea is really, when we saw all the list of challenges, can artificial intelligence be one of the tools that we could add to our arsenal in order to address these different challenges? So let's look at them. Okay, so a few definitions first. Algorithm. So algorithm, it's like it's sort of a cooking recipe where you give a step-by-step procedure to the computer to follow, and it will allow the computer to resolve a problem. And in this case, in that cooking recipe, the ingredient that we give the computer is data. Cloud or cloud computing, this is basically the practice of using a network of remote servers hosted on the internet where we can store, manage, retrieve, and analyze the data. And as we will see, instead of using your local server or your local computer. And we will see that this is extremely useful because artificial intelligence requires a large amount of data and a huge computing capacity. Machine learning. Machine learning is basically the ability of a computer machine to learn from examples rather than being specifically programmed for a specific task. For example, you will teach a machine to recognize a dog by feeding it a number of pictures of a dog, properly labeled, this is a dog, this is not a dog, and so forth. And the machine is going to learn by itself without being told really what a dog is. Artificial neural networks, or ANN, it's basically the computer system that mimic the human brain. And these allow that self-learning, that learning capacity of the machines, where the machine is learning by example rather than being specifically programmed for some task. And finally, collaborative intelligence, which is sort of a part of artificial intelligence, where here, artificial intelligence is designed to help us, human, achieve a better work, so to augment our capacity in reacting to situations. By the way, if you wonder why I wrote these characters the way I did, it's basically also to illustrate the point that so far the human brain is still ahead of the machine. While I'm sure you had no problem able to read those terms, the computer could not. And when I run the spell check, it will stop at every single word, telling me that the spelling was wrong, even though it was offering me the same spelling. So we're still ahead of the machine for the time being. So, a fact, by 2050, the farm will generate on average 4.1 million data points that will through the Internet of Things, sensors, and devices. So, are we ready to handle all that data, or how can we best use the data that will be generated on our farms? So right now, how are you collecting data on your farm? Is it the picture on the right, where you use the old method, paper and pen? Or is it the picture on the left, where you have wireless sensors that will automatically transmit data onto your computer? Well, I think most of us, most of the farms, we still rely on the method on the right, which makes actually the recording of the data quite tedious and the analysis even harder. And by the way, don't feel bad. I mentioned to you that I used some examples of our family farm in Canada. And this is the type of data, this is how we record the data in many instances. So you're not the only one if that's the case for you here. Okay, so artificial intelligence and what we can do with that data is basically a chance to optimize production using the data that we generate. And the data is obviously critical for artificial intelligence during the learning process. I mentioned to you that the machine is going to learn through examples. And that data must obviously be relevant and accurate so that you can properly train the machine. For example, you will need to tell the machine what is the proper weight of the broiler at 21 days and what is not the proper weight. Or you will need to explain to the machine, or show the machine what is the proper temperature for a cage on the 30 of an 8-tier housing system, for example. So those are the type of information that we must feed to the machine during the learning process. Then, obviously, we use the cloud-based resources for the analysis of the data. And that cloud is also a very useful tool in terms of sharing the information between workers, between plants, and if you have a large company, you are able to share the data much better. And in the end, really, all what we need, or what the use we have for artificial intelligence, is ready to provide us advanced notice of a particular outcome. So here's an example of a company in Canada, Intelia. They have specialized in using field data to predict production performance of a flock. So they have a number of sensors on the farm that will look at the temperature, the weight of the birds, the ammonia level, the ventilation, the feed consumption, the water consumption, all those things that you can imagine. And through that, they are able to, using the live data, to predict with 14 days notice what the weight of the bird will be in 14 days. And they have performed that with excellent accuracy. And because they use a self-learning algorithm, the method is actually improving over time. The more flocks you put into the system, the better the prediction. So let's imagine that you work for a processing plant and you're a broiler farmer, you have to deliver the birds at 2 kilos at 37 days. If 14 days in advance, you know that your birds are going to be over that 2 kilo weight, then you can suddenly use a number of tricks, like reduce the number of light, reduce the activity of the birds, so that the birds are going to consume less feed and grow less. If on the opposite, you can have the prediction that the birds are going to be underweight, then you can definitely find ways to stimulate the eating of the feed so that the birds will catch up and be delivered at the 2 kilos. So that's what artificial intelligence can do on the farm, predict in advance using field data. Artificial intelligence is also well known now for the number of applications using robots on the farm. So let's look at a few examples. Let me introduce you to this couple that manage a broiler breeder farm in France. And as a nation with a very active space program, you certainly appreciate their analogy. About 4 years ago, they were complaining that we could send in the space some probes millions of kilometers away to study the deep space and comets. But yet, we could not find a way to prevent their breeder birds to lay the eggs on the floor. So they went to see a local engineering company, explain the problem, and they designed that robot. So I think I really like this example because this is really a problem from the field that created a great application for artificial intelligence. So this is, again, remember, I have absolutely no financial involvement with those companies, just to illustrate the cases here. So One of the advantages of those robots is really their presence on the farm 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And by using that machine, they noticed that within 2 weeks, they will have 26% less eggs on the floor, laid on the floor. And that reached an incidence of floor eggs about 1.5%. Less floor eggs means less dirty eggs or cleaner eggs, meaning in the end, better hatchability. Again, broiler breeders here. And under the condition in France, they claim the return on investment between 9 to 12 months for this type of equipment. So they also developed the brother of this robot, and here this is for broilers. So let's have a quick look also on the video here. Okay, thank you. So again, the advantage of this machine again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And by using the machine, they reported improvement in feed conversion and also increase in the average daily gain. But the advantage of the robot is not just about profitability. And you will have seen in the previous video, that the system was also able to aerate, ventilate the litter, removing therefore areas where you will have caking, less humidity, which will then translate into less problem of pododermatitis, foot burn and breast burn. So meaning that not only the robot can help us with having better productivity, but also address one of the biggest concerns currently of the consumers, welfare, better welfare for the birds. So a great additional tool for producers. Now, don't ask me why, but another French company also came up with another robot. So let's have a quick look again, because it's slightly different, but same idea. Okay, thank you. So you will have seen on the video towards the end the mention of artificial intelligence and artificial vision, and I will talk a bit more about this, but this is certainly a very, very promising application. So what that robot is also able to do by going through the barn slowly is able to measure the ammonia level, the temperature, the humidity on the farm. And you can see that it's able to detect any potential area where there's a problem with ventilation that will impact both the welfare of the birds, but also the performance. And by having this information early on, then producers are able to react quickly before the problem becomes endemic throughout the barn and affect the productivity and the welfare of the entire flock. Now, if you're concerned about having a robot on the floor, there's also now some other equipment. This is from Spain, where the robot is actually on the ceiling and circulating over the birds. So another alternative. Sorry, lack of time, I won't be able to show you the video, but same principle, except the robot is sort of flying over the birds. And finally, we also have robot for layer farms, and this is a prototype here from Wageningen University, where they will collect, you see the eggs on the floor, and basically in 1 hour I can handle a barn for 30,000 hens, and at the same time, the robot is also capturing information and data in terms of the environment and the health status of the flock. So all these applications of artificial intelligence on our farms are actually using the data that we have to help us make prediction on which we can have an action. So before it's too late, we can then react and modify the outcome and get the outcome that we're looking for. The robot, or artificial intelligence, is also helping us reduce some of the tedious and painful manual labor, and therefore on the farm we can concentrate on some more value-added activities. Those artificial intelligence have certainly an impact on better productivity and profit for the farmers, but the last point is also extremely important, probably more in Western countries where there's a strong emphasis on animal welfare. These artificial intelligence allow us to improve even further the welfare and the well-being of our birds. What are the future opportunities for artificial intelligence in our farms? There's currently some research trying to analyze and teach machine the sounds that the birds are making in order to interpret what they are telling us. And if you can click on the mongoose, we just hear one call. Anyway, so those of us working on farm, you would have recognized sort of the type of sound that a bird will make when there's a danger on the ground. Lack of time, but there's also different calls, when there's a danger over the head of the chickens or when they find some food. So, So this is what they are currently working on, teaching the machine how to understand the sounds made by the birds in terms of detecting any potential adverse circumstances or situation for the birds. But as you would expect, it's extremely challenging, as in our chicken farms, there's a lot of other noises, and therefore this is going to be a very difficult process, but help is on the way, and we should have some applications at some point. Other application of artificial intelligence on our farms, the disease prevention. Again, if we can detect a disease very early on during the incubation period through artificial intelligence, it will help us make sure that we can react before the disease affects the entire flock. Disease diagnosis, and I don't think here that artificial intelligence is either going to replace veterinarians of diagnostic lab, but artificial intelligence, and that's in the sense that collaborative intelligence, is going to help us do a better job. We are going to be even more accurate through our diagnosis. Other areas will be around feed formulation optimization, genetic selection, hatchery management, you name it. There's a lot of potential application of artificial intelligence. It's just going to take resources, time. All that machine learning process is a very cumbersome, long process, but it will be done. Now, artificial intelligence is not just on our farms, and we'll see a number of applications also in processing and packing plant. Again, some of the issues that we are hoping artificial intelligence can help us address here are, we have, especially in the processing plant, a number of tasks that are extremely repetitive and can cause stress, can cause pain to the workers. We also have a problem is that we typically fail to have real-time data. So if at the processing plant, workers are making mistakes, it can have an impact in terms of the amount of meat, yield from the carcasses, and therefore the profitability of your business. Going along with it, lack of real-time data means that you have a problem in terms of trying to give incentive to workers based on the actual performance. And the final one is also the fact that we are limited by human intervention in terms of the number of chicken carcasses or egg that you can handle in an hour. And we will see that artificial intelligence here is helping us tremendously in the feed of processing. So artificial intelligence, and here this is artificial vision, is helping us maximize, or making sure that we get the most of the chicken carcasses. In a number of countries, in the Western world, we know that the consumers is ready to pay a premium price for the breast meat. And therefore, in the plant, we need to make sure that we get the maximum yield on the breast meat during the deboning process. And first, you obviously have to train the workers to do a good job. But in addition to that, you need to monitor to make sure that the work is being done properly and you're not leaving a few grams on each carcass, because at the end of the day, it's a lot of kilos or tons that you will leave on the table. So this is artificial vision using the infrared technologies that is able to measure on the carcass how much meat is left on the carcass. And therefore, management or supervisor in the plant can immediately, this is real time, can immediately retrain the workers if need be, and therefore to limit the potential losses. Also, if you operate, this is a very accurate method of measurement, and therefore you can compare the performance of workers or shift, or if you have a multiple processing plant, you can also measure and compare the results between different plants. Artificial vision is also used in the egg processing business. So we know that breaking machines are basically opening up, cracking the eggs, and you will separate the egg into the yolk and the egg white. And a number of applications of the egg white require that you have an excellent quality egg white without the trace of any yolk. So a number of machines now are using artificial vision to inspect each little cup to make sure that the egg white is clear of any yolk or any eggshell pieces, for example. So, So on the left, you can see the yolk in the top cup, and the egg white will fall into the pan. And on the right-hand side here, the computers, if the artificial vision detect any problem in terms of yolk into the egg white or some eggshell pieces, that product is going to be discarded into that inedible portion and not sent to either egg white or egg yolk. I should have mentioned previously also, one of the reasons artificial vision is so important, those machines operate at about 200,000 eggs per hour. So it's about 60 eggs per second. And there is nowhere that a worker can actually be functional and be able to detect those type of problems. Same thing for the eggshell business. As you know, and you have a picture here, bottom left, sometimes the eggs will have some external defect like dirt, like fecal material, or with it inside the egg you will have some blood spot. And in a number of countries, even though some may not necessarily be a food safety concern, you have to remove these products from human consumption. And for a number of years, you will do the candling process, so you shine a light from under the eggs, and the worker will identify the eggs that needs to be removed. But the modern machine now operates at a speed about 255,000 eggs per hour, so that's about 70 eggs per second. Again, impossible for people to react quickly enough to make sure that they remove all the eggs that have some defects. So this is how now the modern machines are doing it through artificial vision. And if you could click, please, on the picture, we'll have a quick shot from our family farm here. Okay, yep. You can, please, yep, okay. And again, so in the past, we used to have 1 or 2 persons doing the job, and now this is the machine, artificial vision, that does that. And also, if you want to click on the left, just have a look at, this is basically the monitor control that show you all these eggs. The machine identify through artificial vision every single egg and any one that needs to be removed for whatever reason that has been part to the machine will be removed. So again, this type of equipment has two advantages. It removes the risk of human error and also has been allowed us to move at much faster speed in terms of processing the egg. And artificial vision is also combined with the smart automation in the meat processing business. So again, last video, let's have a quick look of this here.